What do you think of when mentioning Nintendo consoles from the past 3 decades? For most, it would be the GameCube, Wii, or N64. Consoles with a lot of memories tied to millennials and Zoomers alike. But for me personally, that title would have to go to this dinky little handheld. Released in February 2012 in Japan and March 2012 in the West, the 3DS went from being seen as a perceived flop on release day to being the console that saved Nintendo among a sea of competition, with it now having a major spike in popularity for many young adults and teens who grew up with the console. But that can be said for many Nintendo consoles, especially handhelds. So what was the features that made me come to love the 3DS like so many others? When you first boot up the 3DS, you are greeted to a startup menu. At first, it begins pretty normally. Making your profile, setting a time and date, and picking your Wi-Fi. But as time goes on, you quickly notice the music that plays in the background. That's the startup theme. But to a lot of people, such as myself, this theme means nothing more than just a song that plays once on a console. Hearing it brings back a sense of innocence and nostalgia that can't be replicated no more. That is the magic that comes with the 3DS. And that same magic also applies to a large quantity of 3DS music, like the heavenly feel of the home menu, or the catchier beat that can be heard on the internet settings. This may sound like small details to mention, but consoles like the Wii wouldn't be as loved as they are today if not for the themes for the Wii Shop channel and the Me channel, and the same applies with the 3DS. Speaking of applications, the 3DS also had a large variety of them too. Some of them were pretty expected to see, like the eShop and camera app. But others were new territory for Nintendo, like the AR cards, which is Nintendo's short-lived experiment that allowed you to interact with Nintendo characters and play mini-games through the cards on your camera. Or what about Face Raiders, the game where you had to take down these propeller-looking creatures based on the faces you captured using your 3DS camera. A lot of these 3DS titles didn't really set the world on fire in terms of pure quality, but together they created a console that was already packing with things to do on launch, like capturing videos, creating audio files, or making your Miis. But if we want to talk about the best part of the 3DS, we have to go to the eShop, home to a lush collection of virtual console games spanning from the Game Boy, Game Boy Color, SNES, NES, and even the Game Boy Advance for early adopters. But if we want to get even more from the console, we have to remember the theme shop, which gave Nintendo users the option to customize their menu based on games, characters, and consoles, something that the Wii and Wii U couldn't replicate, and the console after that. And if you wanted just a little bit more customization, we have to bring up Badge Arcade, a crane game style service that had badges to place on your home menu for many games in the 3DS library, which all came together to make the 3DS such a personal console, not only for its games and music, but the way that every 3DS can have its own theme and identity attached to it. All of these features are great and all, but what makes it a memorable console, aside from its features, is that of the game library, which the 3DS had in droves by the end of its life. But it wasn't the best at first. Yes, we had some good titles on its release day, like Pilot Wings Resort and Steel Diver, alongside a couple of third-party titles, but none of them were immediate system sellers, which wasn't the best for Nintendo when considering the price the console still had at $250. But as time passed, the 3DS was slowly making a comeback with remakes of both Ocarina of Time and Star Fox 64. Star Fox 64 made sense considering the on-rails lens that worked well with the 3D effects. In Ocarina of Time, not as much, but having one of your most critically acclaimed games on the console was definitely a big deal. But if we want to talk about the heavy hitters for the console following the price drop, then that would have to be Mario 3D Land and Mario Kart 7 releasing in the holiday year. Mario 3D Land was the bigger game of these two titles as one of the first original 3D Mario games on a handheld. And while the game today may be seen as one of the more forgettable titles in the Mario 3D franchise, it will always have a special place in my heart for all the hours I crammed into it. The same could also be said for Mario Kart 7, which is probably the Mario Kart game I had the most experience with, aside from 8 Deluxe, with half of these maps being craved into my skull for whatever reason. And there were so many other Mario games that I loved too on the 3DS, like the remake of Mario & Luigi Superstar Saga, which is the first ever Mario & Luigi game that I bet and had an absolute blast playing with thanks to its fun and rewarding action commands. Or what about WarioWare Gold and all its fun mini-games from the series crammed into one title with an even crazier story mode that added so much life into its colorful cast? Or what about Mario Maker, which while being the worst version of the game, still was something I remember playing as a kid by making my own Mario levels on the go. But if we had to discuss all of my experiences with Mario games on the 3DS, we would have to be here all day. So other titles that weren't related to the Italian plumber was that of Kirby, who had an amazing time on the handheld with games like Super Deluxe and Planet Robobot, which I consider to be the best 2D games of the franchise. There were also expansions of Kirby sub-games that were released exclusively on the eShop, with Blowout Blast and DDD Drum Dash being some of the better titles to come from the releases. Aside from Kirby, there was of course Smash 4, which is obviously the better version of the game considering its inclusion of Smash 1, the best Smash mode to never return. And the Pokemon games, which while being somewhat controversial, are still seen as acceptable games from the franchise, especially compared to what we get today. I especially have fond memories of Pokemon Gen 6 and Gen 7, more so from the anime, but those new Pokemon, characters and gimmicks still hit hard whenever I boot up these two classics. And to round things out, I'm going to mention some of the more obscure titles on the console, like Rhythm Heaven Megamix, a collection of mini-games like WarioWare Gold, and probably one of the best titles in the franchise aside from Fever. And for the last game to mention, I have to bring up another Sakurai title, Kid Icarus Uprising, which even today still seems so surreal to play on the console for its sheer scale, music, voice acting, and really addicting high-octane gameplay. But once you get past the somewhat weird controls, I truly believe that Kid Icarus Uprising is the magnum opus of the 3DS. Pretty impressive considering all the other titles that were released on this handheld, but also a feat for its greatness. Having good games and a fun interface will already make any console a one to keep. But what puts the 3DS over other consoles is that of the modding scene. Because it's no secret that the 3DS is easy to mod. Just insert the SD card into your computer, find a good tutorial, play some files, and bam, you have modded your 3DS. And by modding, you've turned what is already a good handheld into one of the best. You can now access services like the Universal Downloader to get other applications, ranging from Minecraft builds to ports of Doom. You can use the Twilight menu to load files of your DS games without booting your cartridges, along with other consoles. You can use services like NetPass and PlayCoin to have easy access to coins and Street Pass. It seems kind of weird to do, considering that Street Pass is probably one of the most rewarding features to have in a 3DS when you find an actual real person. But hey, if you want to get it through the easy way, then those services are already available for you to get. Furthermore, you can even use the 8-shop to, well, if you know, you know, okay? I wanted to get taken down by the ninjas, okay? But all of these only to scratch the surface of 3DS modding. You can use apps to download custom themes like this on your menu, along with badges and splashes. You can also have a Nintendo Network back with services like Pre-Nintendo to get a somewhat working version of online play on games like Mario Kart 7 or Mario Kart CT7, which is a Mario Kart mod that is based on the Wii mod that gives you access to new characters and swags based on the Mario series and beyond. All of these features are not original to the 3DS, as seen with other consoles like the Wii or even the PSP to a certain extent. But when you put all of these features together, along with the unique traits of the 3DS, is where you get a console that truly meets the best of all worlds in terms of both quantity, quality, and portability. When you mention a topic as broad as the 3DS, it's impossible to not miss on some parts of the console without going on some long rant for an hour or so. But I hope my video at least discussed some of the reasons on why I and so many others still love this handheld, and how it'll stand the test of time even when there are new consoles on the horizon.